Good evening. Kevin, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Kathy. Hello and good evening to everybody. Glad to see you. On behalf of Roseville Coalition of Neighborhood Associations and also known as Arcona, the League of Women Voters, my name is Kevin LaChance and I'm the president of Arcona. Welcome to our biannual and first virtual Roseville City Council Candidate Forum. For those of you that are not familiar with Arcona, we are a nonprofit established over 20 years ago by the Roseville Police Department. The mission is to improve the social, physical, and economic health in the Roseville community by sharing information and encouraging communication among neighborhoods and local government. Arcona does not support or endorse any candidate or political party. Our elections for the first time in Roseville are district-based. There are 5 districts in Roseville, and only districts 1, 3, and 5 are currently up for elections, with districts 2 and 4 not coming up for election until the year 2022. If you do not know in which district you live, you can find out by browsing using the URL arcona.org/mydistrict, and that will forward you to the city's website that will help you find what district your house is in. Our forum is moderated this evening by Kathy Souza from the League of Women Voters. Kathy, I'm going to turn the rest of the event over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and welcome to a Zoom meeting candidate forum. This is our first attempt to conduct a virtual candidate forum during a pandemic, so please bear with us. To provide a better viewing experience, we recommend you select speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can also swap the shared screen, and by doing that, you can swap the shared screen, which is the large portion, with the speaker view. And depending on your device, you can do this by clicking on the speaker window or by clicking on the button at the upper right-hand corner of the speaker window that says Swap Shared Screen with Video. And now, welcome to a candidate forum featuring candidates for Roseville City Council. I am Kathy Souza, a member of the League of Women Voters of Placer County and the moderator for today's forum. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Placer County and the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhood Associations. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our audience. The questions will be reviewed by League members. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Finally, the candidates will have 1 minute to make a closing statement. If you would like to submit a question during the forum, please use the chat feature and select Submit Questions. That's the person who's going to be feeding the questions to me. You'll see other people on the chat, but only the Submit Questions is the one that will actually take questions. And please address your questions to all candidates unless your question is specific to a particular district. Volunteers are screening the questions for appropriateness and redundancy. And we will post to the candidates as many questions as time allows. And now I would like to introduce the candidates who are running for Roseville City Council. For District 1, LaMills Garret. Mr. Garret?
Hello.
Thank you. Tracy Mendonsa. Tracy?
Hello.
Thank you. For District 3, Geoff Sakala. Mr. Sakala?
Hello.
Bruce Houdesheldt.
Good evening.
And Neil Pople.
Hello.
For District 5, Scott Alvord.
Howdy, how's everybody doing?
And Gary Johnson.
Hello.
Welcome and thank you for agreeing to participate in today's forum. We're now ready to begin, and we'll start with opening statements. We'll begin with Mr. Pople.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Arcona and to the League of Women Voters for this great opportunity in what can best be described as uncertain times. Roseville's a place for family. My family came to Roseville nearly 3/4 of a century ago because it's the best place to enjoy all that California has to offer, and it's the same today. So, good evening. My name's Neil Pople. I'm a 4th-generation Roseville resident running for City Council in District 3. I attended Kirby Elementary and Ike Junior High and came back to Roseville after graduating from Lincoln High School to attend Sierra College and then eventually Sac State. In between, I worked as a server, a video clerk, a retail manager, a carpenter's assistant, whatever it took to pay the bills for school. And currently I work for Placer County in the Health and Human Services Department doing accounting work. I'm running for City Council because I want a better future for families in Roseville. We're watching development grow at a rampant rate here in town, and with little regard to environmental preservation or open space. We're facing a health crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in a century, and we need an advocate who's going to stand with nurses and health professionals to publicly advocate for better health measures. I want to see a Roseville that includes universal broadband access to keep our jobs through this pandemic. I want to see more public transit that actually works for city residents and is safe for everyone. I want to protect our parks and high standard of living that's made Roseville the city that it is. And most importantly, I want a better Roseville for my family and for yours. I'm going to work my heart out to provide the representation that you deserve. I'll be all open, thoughtful, and maybe most importantly, fully available to hear from you directly. So please visit my website, neilpople.com, to learn a little bit more about me. And I'd appreciate your vote. I'm looking forward to your questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Hi, my name is Gary Johnson. My parents taught me from my early years as a teenager that a person should volunteer to help other people. My whole career has been devoted towards that, as far as volunteering to help our fellow people in our country, kind of thing, and that's what I've done. I enlisted in the United States Air Force when I was 18, served in the Air Force for 6 years. I went to college locally at American River College, Sacramento State College, and I got my master's degree in quality systems management. I've also, like I said, I was in law enforcement for 32 years with the Air Force and Coast Guard. I also retired from the military. I retired from the military, but I also retired from law enforcement. I was with the Placer County Sheriff's Office, and I also worked for the state of California for 29 years. I continued my volunteer experience by, I served 20 years on a school board. I currently serve on the Roseville High School school board, and I'm coming up to my point in time where my time has ended at the school board. I'm not running for re-election, I'm running for the city council. From my school days, I've been a site council member. I've worked on Boys and Girls Club as far as helping youth and everything. And I work for 4 veteran nonprofits, so I continue to help veterans in with PTSD issues, financial issues, and our homeless veteran population. So I've been told I have a lot of experience. I think I would do an excellent job if I'm elected to the city council, and I plan on giving the position 100% of my effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garrett.
Hello. My name is LaMills Garret. I transferred here as an engineer with Hewlett Packard almost 20 years ago. And since that time, I've succeeded in a professional capacity while always stepping up in our community. When my older son's basketball team at the Lowards Gym on Atlantic Street needed a coach, I stepped up to coach. When the principal at Caseburg Elementary asked for help reviving the PTC, I stepped up to be president. When the legendary coach and scout leader John Hooten implored me to help with the Johnson Ranch Barracudas, despite having no experience, I stepped up then. When HP needed speakers for the local schools to share about STEM, I was there. I continued to step up to be HP's liaison to the Roseville Chamber of Commerce, then to serve on the Roseville Police Activities League when I was asked by former Roseville Police Chief Daniel Hine. 5 years ago, I worked with Mr. Maloney at Excelsior Elementary to create a monthly session where I introduced his class to Khan Academy. I gave students gifts as incentives while also helping them in their math skills. Growing up in poverty myself, I know what it's like to see choices being made between meals and bills. This perspective drove me to serve on the board of the Placer Food Bank. I've also made sure my children volunteer at places like the Salvation Army and Loaves and Fishes over the years. Most recently, I served on the Roseville's Charter Review Commission, where I advocated for the voice of citizens and for the city to become more efficient. Two examples of that are actually measures on the ballot right now this year, whereas we'll have hopefully independent redistricting commission to determine what the district boundaries should be in Roseville and to increase the bid limit for contracts to allow our city to be more efficient. My entire adult life, I have served my community and my country. Yes, I'm also a U.S. Air Force veteran. I am currently leading the drive to reestablish the Johnson Ranch Neighborhood Association. And from me, District 1 will get someone who's always been committed to the community and who will listen to your voice, someone who has the the business and financial acumen to guide on the tough decisions, and with understanding technology and business to drive out waste. I will ensure Roseville is an inclusive, safe, fiscally responsible, and economically thriving community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Houdesheldt.
Good evening. I'm Roseville City Council member Bruce Houdesheldt. I want to thank Arcona for this candidates forum tonight, participated in 2018. This is just one example of Arcona's civic engagement. During my 6 years on the Planning Commission, Arcona served a vital role of posting planning applications so the community could become aware. You know, the National Night Out and the movies in the park, all of these things exemplify why this is a wonderful community and a much sought after community to live in. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for their co-hosting it. It was 100 years ago last month that the 19th Amendment passed, and voting is a very, very sacred and civic duty that we should all act on each and every election. I also want to thank the new generation of Arcona, Kevin LaChance, Will Rogers, and some of the others. I serve as the city's representative to Arcona, and I've had an opportunity to go to most, if not all, of the neighborhood association meetings. Kevin and Will Rogers and others are community focused, much like Lauren Clark, like the late Robert Sanchez is. My parents, my mom from New England, my dad from Illinois, raised me. We were outside of Washington, D.C. in the late 60s, and civic engagement was something I was raised on. That's an ethic, much like Arcona, that I bring to the council now and will bring to the council for the next 4 years. I look forward to the forum tonight and the opportunity to talk about my priorities and hear the questions of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa?
Good evening. Thank you again to Arcona and the League of Women Voters for putting this on. It's a great opportunity for our residents to get to know all of us candidates, and I'm happy to be participating in it this evening. You know, so many people have echoed similar things to what I'm going to go over, but Roseville's a great city, and I'm proud to call it home. As a husband, a father, and a small business owner right here in Roseville, I'm committed to the future of Roseville and maintaining our high quality of life. And if anybody tells you our high quality of life isn't attracting businesses and residents, they're lying to you, because they are. And it's important that we continue doing that and continuing, especially coming out of COVID, to attract those businesses and to make sure that our residents are happy, well-served, and get the quality of life that they bought into when they moved here. Speaking of COVID, in these times of uncertainty and unprecedented challenges, I believe Roseville needs experienced and proven leadership on the city council. This is particularly important as we move to district-based representation for the first time. Our new council members must be vocal advocates, and they must represent not only the district, but the city as a whole. I want us to be fiscally responsible and ready to face the fiscal challenges on the horizon. And I want us to continue to be a destination for families and businesses seeking the best quality of life here in Northern California. I'm a former federal agent. I went in after 9/11, worked for the Department of Justice for just under 12 years. I was proud of the work that we did with the Anti-Terrorism Task Force and related agencies. I currently am an investigator here in Roseville, working as a federal contractor. I have my own business, T-Bones Barbecue, which is based right here in Roseville. I'm in your community. I'm happy to serve. I'm on several boards and and participate in many volunteer organizations. I'm your neighbor, I'm somebody that wants to work with you, and I look forward to working with our staff and getting your vote in November.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala?
Good evening, Roseville. My name is Geoff Sakala, and I'm running for the Roseville City Council in District 3. I would also like to thank Arcona for hosting our candidate forum tonight, and for the League of Women Voters for moderating this great panel. I moved to Roseville 5 years ago, and the primary reason was we have 2 young daughters, and we wanted our kids to be raised and to start school with great schools and great neighborhoods. And we've grown to come and love living in Roseville, the quality of life, the schools, and the city government are fantastic. I'd like to share a little bit about my background. I spent 4 years in the United States Army serving our country. I'm a small business owner, have been for 10 years. I've served our city on the Economic Development Advisory Committee for 2 years, and also spent 3 years working with the Downtown Roseville Partnership and the Downtown Roseville Merchants, working to revitalize our downtown. I'm currently a board member for the Roseville Chamber of Commerce, and have been a longtime member of the chamber and very active in the business community. I'm running because I care a lot about the future of Roseville, and I believe there's some issues that we need to take a strong stance on. Some of those include reopening our economy and getting our businesses reopened, getting people back to work, fully funding our public safety, police, and fire so that they can do their jobs, keep us safe, and protect our homes. I think we need to grow our jobs and increase our employment base here in Roseville. And I think we need to invest in infrastructure to get back to building parks, roads, bridges. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Mr. Alvord?
Good evening. Thank you so much for caring enough to listen to us talk to you tonight. My wife Karen and I have spent most of our lives in the city of Roseville. We came here after we were married. We've raised all of our family here. We have a very large family and grandchildren now. I started my businesses here, and we're going to retire here. I currently am the CEO for Advanced Development Concepts, LLC. It's a business consulting company. It actually started as a software company when I was in college. I'm a business professor out at William Jessup University. I spend most of my time, however, serving as a city council member. Prior to council, I started and ran a restaurant called the Dash of Panache down on Vernon Street. I had that for over a decade, and I was president of the Downtown Merchants for 9 of those years. I served on several city boards and commissions and also with a chamber, and I was elected in 2016. When I campaigned in 2016, I promised the community that I would stay involved. That was my promise. I was not going to disappear after the election like sometimes you see candidates after they're elected, they kind of disappear. I stayed active in the Arcona neighborhood network. I was in Arcona long before I was elected, and I still am. I'm a board member in the West Park Neighborhood Association that I helped to restart. I'm known for doing my homework on council. I stay very active in the neighborhoods and the business community. I talk to business owners all the time as a council member. And I'm also very transparent, and I'm known for being responsive to answering questions in the community. I spend several hours every day, almost every morning, responding to messages, emails, and phone calls as a council member. It's a very sincere privilege to be elected by my neighbors, and I take that very seriously. I'm not a politician, but I do this I take it seriously again because you've counted on me. And if you re-elect me for another term, I promise that I'll continue to give it my very best. My endorsements include the chamber, public safety officials, a lot of electeds. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're ready to begin our question and answer period. Once again, if you would like to submit a question for our candidates, please use the chat feature and select Submit Questions. For our first question, we'll begin with Mr. Pople. What do you consider to be the major issues in your district and in our city, and how will you address them?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. So the third district is what I like to call the commercial / retail hub of Roseville. I mean, we've got Topgolf, we have the Galleria Mall, we have you know, tons and tons of restaurants and shops. This is the place. And COVID-19 has kind of thrown everything for a loop. So what happened?
Uh-oh, can you stop the clock? What
Neil,
happened,
you
Mr.
seem to
Pople?
have dropped. I'm looking.
Hmm. Why don't we go on to the next candidate, and when Mr. Pople comes back in, we'll restart his clock for him. How's that? Okay, Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, would you like to answer the question? Would you like me to repeat it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Do I need to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What do you consider to be the major issues in your district and in our city, and how will you address them?
Okay, yeah, the main issues in District 5, I think, are, as well as the rest of the city of Roseville, and I received numerous phone calls from people saying, we need to support our small businesses. I'm a small business owner myself. I work for a real estate company and have sold many houses out in this area of West Park. So I'm familiar with the issues as far as the growing community we have. People just want to be heard out here as far as what's going on. I think we should have some kind of newsletter that would go out monthly to the constituents as far as people in the district to let them know what new buildings are being built and what is happening as far as improvements on roads and that kind of thing. Another big issue people are concerned about is the support of the fire and the police department. With my background and experience, I think I could help greatly in that area to help improvements, recommend improvements in those different areas. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Johnson is back. Can you hear me, Mr. Johnson?
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Pople.
Mr. Pople. No, okay, let's go to Mr. Houdesheldt.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, he is back. I just need to, he re-added. So I will fix Mr. Pople and we'll come back to him.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Houdesheldt.
Great, thank you for that question. You know, the issues in District 3 are the same issues throughout the city. Folks want to feel safe. They want to make sure that that we can deal with traffic congestion, especially along, you know, in our area. So it really isn't a district issue. It's an issue throughout the city, which we are working on and addressing, and we have the fortune to move forward. People want to feel safe. They don't want their windows shattered in their cars. They want their parks to be enhanced. And those are the issues that I've been working on and will continue to work on when I'm elected to serve this District 3.
Thank you. Mr. Pople, I think you're back. Would you like to answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much, and apologies for that. So the question was asking about the major issues. So again, retail and commercial being some of the biggest parts of the district. It's something that I definitely want to address, especially in the era of COVID. You know, we have to reopen our businesses, but we have to do it in a smart way. We can't get ourselves sick again and go through this whole process all over from scratch again. So that's something that I definitely want to address, the safe reopening of the city. Obviously, better broadband access would be a great thing, because as you just witnessed, what just happened to me, it happens to people all the time. People that are trying to do Zoom meetings for work, people are trying to get into their classrooms to be able to do schoolwork. These are all new issues to us that have, you know, popped up in the last 6 months, but they're big issues and they're probably not going away anytime soon. So those would be some of my priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'll probably echo some of the issues that have already been brought up, but you know, mainly, again, reopening our economy safely with the small businesses and supporting them so they can get back to work. Fully funding our police and fire. It's vitally important that we have public safety and that people do feel safe in their homes and in their businesses, as well as we got to get people back to work. There are tens of thousands of people that are unemployed now due to the shelter in place and the shutdowns that we've experienced, and that causes all kinds of other problems. And again, we need to look at the growth that we're experiencing and find ways to mitigate traffic, to reduce congestion, and make sure that people can get around town easily and safely.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Johnson. Why did you decide to run for office?
You did miss a couple of us, by the way.
Yeah.
Did I miss a couple of you?
Yes.
I'm sorry, who did I miss?
You missed Mr. Garret, Mr. Mendonsa, Mr. Alvord. You began with Mr. Pople.
Right.
Yeah, I thought I was 3, but I got this.
Oh, Mr. Garret. Did I miss you, Mr. Garret?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
I apologize. I crossed you off and I shouldn't have. Would you please answer the question? Do you need it repeated?
Would you please?
Sure. What do you consider to be the major issues in your district and in our city, and how will you address them?
Oh, thank you. So in our city overall, and I think they all impact each district to some degree, I'd say the top 3 around the responsible growth and development, our overall traffic scenario, and diversifying our tax base. For the responsible growth and development, I think we really need to look at how do we start the process of doing some infill, and within that, looking at how we also address affordable housing, which has actually come down to us from a state level that we must address. Diversifying our tax base, I think, is pretty simple in terms of we need to start looking at some of the work in terms of the great work, frankly, that's already been done by Laura Mattioli and team at Economic Development, of then targeting those who are in the age of groups of 25 to 35 in the evening hours, whereas we lose a lot of dollars to Sacramento from our tax base, from people who head down there instead of leverage the great place that we have in Roseville. And lastly, traffic. Though there was a measure to actually be voted on, I think we really need to look at that differently in terms of what our overall planning is around mass transit, affordable housing, and building overall to address that for our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss someone else?
Tracy and Scott, I think.
I believe that is correct.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Mr. Mendonsa.
Thank you very much. I knew we'd get here eventually. Okay, so the issues that I see in District 1 are no different than a lot of the issues that are facing other districts within Roseville. If I had to rate the top 3 pressing issues in our community, I would certainly say recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, getting people back to work, and making sure that we are mindful of the budget shortfalls coming our way.
Did I lose him?
I think we're having another broadband issue for Mr. Tracy.
Okay, we can come back to him.
I believe getting people back to work, is very important. It's good for our community. And wow, that went quick. And lastly, it's just addressing our fiscal impacts.
I'm sorry you cut out for a few moments. Did you say everything you needed to say?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know when you lost me, so I'll just say the last thing, and hopefully it all comes together. The third thing that we need to do is obviously be realistic in regard to the fiscal impacts that the pandemic has created, and anticipate prior pandemics and what that's going to do to our city budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Alvord.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the pandemic, because that is a huge global and local crisis right now. I think the biggest thing our city is focused on, well, first of all, I want to back up a little bit. We as a community voted for Measure B, the extra sales tax, and that saved us that last fiscal year. That was so critical, because we could have had a $20 million loss, 18 million, somewhere around there, and that tax measure saved us. And so right now, we don't know what the future holds, but our big focus is trying to help our businesses survive. We've got a lot of businesses that are just barely hanging on. And so I've worked really hard. I think our city's focused super hard on small businesses. You've seen what's happened in downtown, allowing the outdoor seating. That's a real big deal for those businesses. I think providing free protective equipment to them, helping them through this process, talking to them, finding out what their needs are. I think the city's been bending over backwards, giving out $1.5 million loans. That's the biggest crisis right now.
Thank you. Have I missed anyone else? Okay, I apologize for that. For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Johnson. Why did you decide to run for office?
I decided to run for office because I received a lot of phone calls from people encouraging me to run because of my background and experience. I feel with my experience, I could be well suited to be on the city council. I've been living here for 8 years. My wife's family's been living here for 40 some years, or not, since 1940. So they've been here a long time. And I've worked in this area for 30 plus years for the state government, county government, and federal government. So the reason, that's one of the main reasons. Roseville's a great town to live in, but I think there's room for some improvement type of thing. I encourage a lot of people to move here because I think this is a great community. And our schools are outstanding. The schools do an outstanding job as far as educating our kids and everything. But that's mainly why I decided to. I think I can make a difference in the way the city is run if given the chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garrett.
Thank you. I want to make sure I remember the question. Why did I choose to run?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I chose to run after some thinking and after some prodding by several people. First off, I've been here about 20 years, and most of my work has simply been in the community in terms of touching people in all of the different places that they are, whether it be in schools, whether it be in the boards that I served on. I've mentioned the RPAL, PTC president, Caseburg Elementary, Placer Food Bank, et cetera. I've simply wanted to serve. That's been my primary purpose. However, over this past year, I served on the Charter Review Commission. And after being able to participate there, I realized that I provided more value to the city beyond the service that I had given. And then following that, actually members of the Charter Review Commission approached me and were pushing me to run. So after considering their input and having a talk with my family and my children and thinking about it, I then realized that my value and my understanding and my commitment to the city was far beyond what most would actually do when they run. And so here I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Houdesheldt.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned at the outset, civic engagement runs deep in my family. And so I was looking for a place to participate in my community. Over 10 years ago, I started off on the Public Utilities Commission and served 2 years there. Then I transitioned over to the Planning Commission, where I served almost 6 years there. So in 2018, when I ran for City Council, it was a continuation of me wanting to give back to the community and my strong civic engagement. I'm committed to Roseville, and I look forward to working in a cooperative spirit with all of Roseville. And that's why I am seeking a full 4-year term on the Roseville City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa.
I decided to run because I believe I have an experience that allows me to bring a much needed perspective to the decision-making process that we currently have. Over the past decade, our city council has trusted my leadership and my ability to represent Roseville with integrity and respect while maintaining the high standard of government, transparency, and accounting by appointing me to the Planning Commission, Design Review Committee, Roseville CPAC, and Transportation Commission. To further expand on why I'm running, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a local small business owner, and I understand the fiscal impacts, and I understand what poor fiscal impacts and decisions that are made at the city level can have. As an experienced law enforcement professional, I also understand that we need to keep our community safe, and that's why my 4 priorities are quality of life, fiscal responsibility, safe communities, and economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm running to continue my public service that started 20 years ago. It started as a student body president and serving my school. I rose my hand and volunteered for our country and spent 4 years in the United States military, and have continued on helping to start a charter school in Sacramento, and spent 5 years as chair of the board and helping a school get started. And in the past 5 years, spending time really working on economic development and business issues in Roseville. So for me, this is just really a continuation of my public service over the past 20 years, and an opportunity for me to serve the entire city of Roseville and bring a business voice to the community and to the council, and help get our businesses back on track.
Thank you. Mr. Alvord.
Well, I'm running for re-election, so I've already served 4 years. I think my last 4 years have been very productive. I've helped strengthen our city in many different ways. We brought a Beat 7 out to the west side, which helped increase public safety throughout our community. I've worked really hard behind the scenes, helping attract businesses. On the west side, we have 45,000 people, and there's no gas, there's no shopping, no grocery stores, no restaurants. And so I've been working very hard trying to attract businesses to the area. I've also done, I've made really good connections with the community. I've been able to help answer questions, solve a lot of different problems with the neighbors, with problems all over the city as well. And I think that connection has been productive, and I felt very good about the work. And so I'm looking to do it another 4 years. I think I've got 4 more years in me. I can work just as hard and be productive for the community, and that's why.
Thank you. Mr. Pople.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, you know, I decided that I wanted to run. It was a process, obviously. You know, a lot of people had suggested to me, hey, you know, you'd be really great doing this. And I kind of, you know, it's maybe one day, it's a thought. And it was one of those struggles for me to decide what I wanted to do. But what I do for a living is I look at the numbers. I look at things as an accountant. And I was looking at the city and seeing how things are with COVID-19, knowing the budget shortfall that we're going to have. I mean, you know, thank God for Measure B being a stopgap for that $20 million deficit. It made me want to get involved, and it made me want to step up to the plate, because I think that I have a different perspective. I am probably going to be one of the youngest candidates that are up here, no offense to anybody. I'm the only renter. I'm the only person from the working class. I'm doing everything I can to make the rent. And I think that that's a different voice that people need to have on the city council, a fresh perspective.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Garrett. What are your plans to ensure that Roseville provides affordable housing?
Thank you. All important question on affordable housing. I think we have to address affordable housing in multiple phases. One is based upon the mandate that's already come down from the state, and how that impacts the city, we have to move on that quickly. So to start off, looking at scenarios of where we can identify infill and or previous used areas within the local area. And I immediately think about Harding and the Douglas area, of where there's some potential low capacity bedrooms within some of the older hotels, et cetera, that are there to fill. However, I think we then also have to look at how do we distribute that throughout the city long term. And so whether it be on new development and or bringing some of that in and having a mixture of that with incentives going out to families to live in some of the new housing, and making sure that we have a percentage of that along with the infill to actually balance that out. But whatever we do, we actually need to make sure that we get affordable housing, and I think distribute it throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Houdesheldt.
Yeah, this is a very important issue, and one that the city council is engaged fully in right now. You know, I think we all started off in an apartment, right? We didn't all start off in a single family home. And we need to have a diversity of housing stock in the city. we have great opportunities along some of our corridors like Douglas, like Vernon, like Kirby, to create a new revitalized Roseville along those corridors, and do it in a way that respects the 50 to 100-year-old neighborhoods that exist there. So we have some real opportunities. We're seeing some of that opportunity come to fruition on Vernon Street with the Losi Apartments. The Main Street Plaza right now, in one of my favorite parts of Roseville, historic Old Town Roseville, is bringing that workforce housing here, so we can have folks that can really start to walk to work.
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa.
Thank you. So just so everybody knows, the city is in its sixth cycle, the process of completing its sixth cycle housing element. And the foundation of that housing element is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. And that begins with the determination of housing needs, and that's regional planning agencies are involved in that. But I think if I remember correctly, the current ask right now is just over 12,000 and change of housing units that we must accommodate. And we have to, as a city, demonstrate that we have sufficient vacant land to accommodate this. I believe, and if elected, I would still believe, it's critical that the city engages the public in a meaningful way to ensure the development of a plan that meets the overreaching goal of preserving and implementing and improving housing options for everyone. The city should implement these policies in concert with the priorities and in partnership with our residents that minimizes tension between market rate and subsidized housing.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's clear that we do need more housing in Roseville. Roseville is a popular place that people love to live. And at the same time, we need affordable housing for young families and for workforce housing. As it's been mentioned, we're in the middle of defining the housing element right now. And there's a big ask from the state for thousands of units. What I would propose and the direction that I would go would be to get broad-based input from all the residents in Roseville, to get input from every neighborhood, from every constituent group, and to really have a broad-based coalition of feedback and input and public forums so that we can come up with a great plan that works for everyone across Roseville and really sets up the city for the future and helps to revitalize certain areas that need it.
Thank you. Mr. Alvord.
First thing I want to say is Roseville is the only jurisdiction within the county that actually enforces affordable housing. We require what's required by law, and we don't take the in lieu fees like many of the other jurisdictions. So we do require it to be built. That being said, my own children had a hard time finding affordable apartments when they got out on their own. The RHNA numbers, the RHNA, pronounced RHNA, those numbers are going to really change our future of affordable housing because we are such a growing community. The state their math is going to impose a lot more affordable units on our city, and we're not going to be able to put them in some of the new areas because of the contracts that are already in place. So the city's going through a really important process right now of overlaying zones so we can be prepared for this when it happens. I'm very impressed with our housing department. I think we've done a really good job to date. We just have a lot more coming at us, and I wouldn't want to be in any other city as this hits. I think they're going to do a really good job with it.
Thank you. Mr. Pople.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, obviously a lot of the things that were mentioned were extremely great points. We need to have more permanent supportive housing. We need to do all those things, but we also need to think about more than just that, but just battling the conditions that led to the problem in the first place. Advocacy is going to be a key in the endeavor, and like standing up and being able to tell the state legislature that we need funds, that we need legislation that is actually going to do some good for not just Roseville, but for all the counties and cities in California. I'd like to partner up with the already overburdened Roseville Police Department, try to find ways and learn from them to see what they've been working on and see what we can do. Because right now we're kind of like in this position where when I was looking for an apartment, the cheapest one I could find was $1,500 a month. And that's not sustainable. There are young people like myself that can't afford $1,500 a month. It's kind of crazy. So we definitely need to look at more than just supportive housing and like.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you need to unmute yourself, please.
All right, let me try again. Being a real estate agent, I'm well aware of the cost with apartments, house rentals, because I get a lot of clients coming here that's the first thing they want to do is come here and stay here for a year just to get used to the area and find adequate housing. But the costs are terrible for rentals, so they decide to move out and then come back to when they have more funds to pay for the higher cost of rentals. But I think we need to focus on affordable housing, especially as it relates to homeless veterans. One of the nonprofits I work for, Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals, we gave away 52 houses last year to veterans that were homeless at one time, and they worked themselves out of it. So I think we need to address the homeless issue, because in our year right now, we shouldn't have anybody homeless living on streets. And that would be a main focus of me running for city council and getting on the city council to help our homeless veterans get into homeless veterans as well as non-veterans that are homeless, get them into affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Houdesheldt. This is the first council election in a district representation configuration of the council. How do you think it will serve the citizens of the broader community over time?
I was hoping that question would be answered tonight. I think, the current council, and I hope future councils, will view the city as a whole. Last night at our city council meeting, we certified a mitigated negative deck for the East Roseville Parkway extension, which will come from the Campus Oaks area over the railroad tracks, past Geoff Sakala's and my house. That will help eliminate some of the traffic and congestion that we see, improve greater access. We're one city, we're not districts. The infrastructure, as an example like that, is where we all need to work together and not work in the specific interest of just the district. We have to look comprehensively. Our firefighters and police, who I have their endorsement and support of, serve our entire city, and I will as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa.
Sorry, I done mute. I look at it this way. The current sitting city council had a very difficult challenge ahead of them, and whether people think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, moving to a district-based election, no matter what city you are, if you're a city of Roseville size or another city that maybe 3 times our size, it's a challenge, and I think everyone needs to respect the fact that that was a heavy lift. That being said, my job as a district representative, I believe, is to make sure the residents in my district are represented. My job as a city councilman is to vote for what is best for the city. So the goal, I believe, of a district-based representative, now that we're going to district-based representation, is for residents to have a clear voice at City Hall, someone they can go to as a point. And my job would be to further that up to my colleagues at the dais and be that voice, but to also make sure that I represent the city as a whole for those decisions that are important as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala.
Yes, well, district elections are entirely new for the city this year, and I think we're all just getting used to it. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think we're all up to the task. There will be issues where we do have an issue in a given district, and maybe that city council member will be passionate about it. But as everyone said, we need to, once elected, represent the entire city of Roseville as a whole. It's going to require us to wear multiple hats. I'm very familiar with that as a business owner, and I think we'll be able to manage that process. I think the districts, if I could say one thing that would be positive, it does make the city a little bit smaller in terms of campaigning. So I'm happy that I'm able to get out and walk and knock and talk to neighbors in a manageable way. And my time is up, but I think we'll work our way through it.
Mr. Alvord.
Well, I know that was quite a debate going to districts or not, but whether we like it or not, we are in districts. It does have an advantage is it does allow communities of similar interests to elect their representative. I know on the west side, for example, we're all new, developing. There's 45,000 people out here, just very similar interests. They can choose somebody to represent them. But it is really important for us and future candidates and for our community to remind them that we do represent the whole city. We are here to serve the whole city. Our votes are just as powerful no matter where the issues are in the city. And people look to us as a community to represent them all. So I do think the important thing is that we just keep reminding ourselves that yes, we're elected by our district, but we absolutely serve everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Pople.
Thank you. I, for one, am thrilled that we have district elections. And one of the things that I would like to say about that is that we get the chance to have a point of contact. We have a person who's going to be an advocate for us on the city council. So local citizens can get together and they can make their presentation and they can talk to a city council member, whoever she or he might be, and that person can then be a champion on the city council when they make a decision. Of course, you know, we represent the city as a whole. That's a given. You know, I mean, look at Sacramento. Sacramento has districts and they've been doing it for quite some time and they seem to be operating in a kind of sort of okay way. We'll be able to do it and we'll be able to do it better. So I, for one, am personally very excited about it and I'm very happy.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I think you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, what I was saying was that I'm personally in favor of districts. I kind of like the covering a small part of the city, but I think when we have to make major decisions that affect the whole city of Roseville, I think we should look at that as far as that's the main part of us being on the city council. But I like the concept of having a district that I can respond to people more often. If they get a call, I promise that I'll get back to them within 72 hours and respond to their concern or complaint and rectify it. And I know our high school district is going to districts in 2 years, and they look at it the same way. We represent the whole city of Roseville as far as school, but they're going to be under the same constraints as far as they represent each district. But I think the concept is great. The only thing I would recommend is possibly maybe look at the boundary line sometime in the future. I think they could be better drawn to make it easier so we know what areas are within the our district. The way it's right now, I think it's a little bit convoluted where it cuts in and cuts out type of thing. So that would be my only recommendation as far as districts.
Mr. Garrett.
Hi, I'm fully supportive of districts. And I think most importantly is as we look at districts, we have to remember that it's bringing together a community or set of communities with the goal overall, though, to make sure that that voice is heard as we make decisions for the city overall. When I think about the district that I'm in specifically, despite how it's configured in a not so congruent manner, I'm lucky that I have tons of experience working in the communities that are in East Roseville, as well as over on the Caseburg side, Caseburg, Kingswood, Diamond K Estates, et cetera. But beyond that, I think being in a district then gives us an opportunity to address issues that's directly of the citizens and the businesses that's there already. As an example, I know there's some residents over here near where I live who are complaining about, or not happy, I shouldn't say complaining, not happy about the scenario of a storage facility being built. Well, I live right by them. They know that they can have that conversation. I'm aware of that. And so there's many examples of that throughout the city, whereas people want someone representing them who experiences the same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Mendonsa. Do you seek office with inspiration to support past City Council's values and expectations, or do you see yourself as a candidate who will propose a changed direction and a new vision? If so, please describe your vision for the future of Roseville.
Thank you for that question. So it's It's interesting. Actually, my campaign slogan is focus on our future, honoring our past. I believe that our past councils have done a wonderful job. Every council is faced with different priorities, but we have good specific plans. We've had good planning. By and large, our park systems, our trail systems, in my opinion, are second to none in our neighboring communities. And that is all because of the hard work of those who have come before us. Moving forward, my vision on this is to further expand on this. And we really, there's a short-term and long-term goal for me. Short-term is we've got to get people back to work and we've got to come out of this COVID strong. It was mentioned earlier by another candidate that we are heavily supported by sales tax, and with brick and mortar going away and the impact from COVID, we've got to seek alternatives. We've got to get on the fast track to fixing that. Longer term than that, we need to remain affordable. We need to remain desirable to people seeking this community and continue to maintain that quality of life.
Thank you. Mr. Sakala.
Yes, well, I think we all live in Roseville and have moved or raised our families here because we love this city. And that's a direct result of all of the city council members and the leaders in this city that have brought us to this point. So of course we want to honor that tradition and that heritage. However, I would also say going forward, it's important that we do have a short-term plan to get beyond this pandemic and reopen our economy and reopen our businesses and get people back to work. And at the same time, we need to reinvigorate that long-term vision. What is the 10-year, 20-year, 30-year plan for the city of Roseville? The previous leaders in this city had foresight to do some great things and bring great businesses and build strong parts of the city government. We need to have the same plan for the next 20 or 30 years as well.
Thank you. Mr. Alvord.
I'm going to apologize. Could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Do you seek office with inspiration to support past city council's values and expectations, or do you see yourself a candidate who will propose a changed direction and a new vision? If so, please describe your vision for the future of Roseville.
Well, first of all, designing a city and watching a city plan take place is a multi-generational process. The concept, the specific plans, for example, that were voted in and approved on the west side, they're going to take still probably another 2 decades to completely fill out. And that's a few generations of city councils coming. So we've got to stick with the plan. There's so many things in government that just take such a long time to take effect. You have to be very well educated, understand where the plan came from, and be willing. I think that's sometimes why some candidates get supported over others, is they understand and they're willing to support that. However, it doesn't mean the time doesn't change. Roseville is growing. We're almost going to double in size. We've already started that process quite a bit. We're at 145,000 right now. That's a lot of change. We're seeing it in traffic. For example, the people on the west side drive across town to go to restaurants. There's just so much development still happening. It's going to happen for a while. So yes, we want to support what's been decided, but we want to make sure as we move forward that we just keep doing it right as the times.
Thank you. Mr. Pople.
Yeah, the answer to that is why not both? Why can't we honor the past while also having a vision for the future? There have been great city council members in my lifetime of living here. My elementary school principal, Mr. Hamill, Mel Hamill, was a great mayor and a great city councilman. June Wainish and Gina Garbolino, they all were trailblazers for the city, and they helped design a vision for the city that we can enjoy today. But this is a new world, and there's some things out there that they had no clue were going to happen, just like we didn't know anything about COVID. We're in a place where we need broadband. We need better broadband access. It's just a matter of fact in the world that we live in now. And that's not something that they thought of before. So of course we can honor them and we can respect them and we can enjoy the fruits of their labor, but we also have a lot of work to do to get us moving forward. And so for me, I think that we can do both. We just have to continue to keep on slogging.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I just want to say that Roseville is an outstanding place to live and work. So I value our past leaders, our city council members, our mayors, and other administrators. my intent when I get elected would be first to meet with the city council members that are in office kind of thing, and share with them my experience and see what they think about improvements that would be needed. My background in education taught me how to go into a business and make it more productive and useful kind of thing. So I think that would be one of the things I look at, as far as I wouldn't go in there and try to hatchet everything and so forth, because like I said, there's a lot of great things happening in Roseville, and our past leaders, even our current leaders, I commend them for the work they've done for the past 2-4 years serving on the city council. But I think there's always a chance for some improvements and everything, and that would be my thing, to go into the city council and see if there's positive improvements that I can recommend to my other council members to see if they agree. Thank you.
Mr. Garrett.
I think we do both. And you know, when I think about it, I think we definitely don't want to become the next LA, meaning we don't want a whole bunch of suburbs outside of the city, and we have highways running all over the place with crazy levels of congestion that people can't get to where they want to go because of poor planning around suburban development. And so I think we need to start looking at mixed use development. I think we should look at performing arts and cultural centers and museums and walkable downtowns, bikeable downtowns, medical facilities on the west side of 80 so that we can clean up some of the traffic congestion that we have over here on the east side trying to get to Kaiser and Sutter. There's a 4-year college coming potentially with the work that's already being done in North Roseville. And so let's make sure that we have the capability for students to get to and from there without everyone having to jump on 65 and then 80 to congest all of the great things that we have available to the overall city. And lastly, technology. Let's use it. It's a great opportunity for us. Thank you.
Mr. Houdesheldt.
Thank you for this question. One of the things your city council did was spend a day and a half in a strategic planning session. We established 6 goals. Through that process, we had public input to that process, and that really is a framework for moving forward. You know, when I first came to Roseville, the Roseville area in 1985, Douglas Boulevard ended right about where the TJ Maxx is. There was no, when my son was born 20 years ago, we had to go to Kaiser and South Sutter. You know, Roseville has had a strategic vision that has evolved and done it in a balanced way. So I'm pleased and have access and have the support of past mayors, Gina Garbolino, Carol Garcia, Susan Rohan, who I seek as council, because we do have to stand on the shoulders of those folks and look as we move forward in the new world. You know, we have an opportunity here to capture a new economic sector in biomedical with our hospital system here.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with Mr. Sakala. How much expansion of Roseville is too much? What can you do to preserve the quality of life in Roseville with the current expansion plans?
Thank you. Yes, well, there has been a lot of expansion. As I said before, I think that's just due to the fact that Roseville is a popular place that we all love, and that has meant that people want to live here and move here. I don't think it's really a question of how much. I think it's more so how do we grow in a smart way. And it's been mentioned before, we need to be smart about how we define the housing element and the future housing plan for the city of Roseville. We need to plan for transportation and roadways, bridges and tunnels to make sure that we have easy access to all parts of the city. And you know, we need affordable housing clearly to accommodate the growth in the workforce population in the city of Roseville. And we can do all those things. I don't think it's a question of one or the other. We can do it all.
Thank you. Mr. Alvord.
When we talk about how much expansion is too much, I hear that the concern a lot from people that have lived here their whole life, and some people that have moved here and don't understand how the planning process works. We have, and the plans are up on the website, city website, we have plans for, again, the next 15, 20 years of growth. And as the growth occurs, and there's no changing that process except for the economy or trends in the market, because that's already set. But as communities grow, they have to add more lanes of roads. You're seeing, with Roseville Parkway, building a bridge to help relieve traffic. 65 is a nightmare. The government messed us up, the federal government coming to the state. That's a whole nother issue. But a lot of our growth does include things like traffic. The biggest problem that we have right now is we're adding more houses than we are commercial. And that's causing a lot of traffic nightmare as all the people on the west side drive across town to get to anything that eventually will be out here. So that's the big thing I think a lot of us are focused on, is just trying to get more of that commercial element along with our housing.
Mr. Pople.
Yes, thank you. Caught me writing. So we're talking about expansion. How much is too much? Well, we need to consider why we love Roseville so much. Is it because of the endless housing tracts, or is it because of the mighty oak trees and the open space that we have? So we need to consider those things when we're building. I have absolutely no problem with growth, and I'm actually pretty excited about all the things that are coming to Roseville's way, particularly that university potentially on the west side of town. But we just have to have an eye for open space. We have to have an eye for the environment, because that's what makes Roseville so great. We don't want to be in suburban sprawl. I think Mr. Garret had mentioned that earlier, where he said that we're not trying to be LA. Well, let's try not to be LA. Let's try to do some things where we have more parks and we have more open space, and that we preserve, the natural beauty that's around us. But we also have to think about the new way that we're building things. Moving forward, what about walkable communities where you're able to go from your house to the supermarket? So we've got a lot of things like that that we have to think about in my time.
Mr. Johnson.
One of the reasons I came to Roseville is kind of like a small town atmosphere. I've lived and worked in other major cities and so forth, and I don't want Roseville to be like LA or Portland or Chicago, a big city like that. I think keeping our small town, I think there's room for expansion type of thing. I wouldn't be against that and everything, because it's like other people have said, it's a great place to live and work and so forth. And that's one of the reasons I chose this area. But as far as expansion, I'm in favor of expansion, but I want to keep still the small town atmosphere. When I first came to Roseville back in '75, I worked with the Roseville Police Department. I'm kind of Asian myself now, so that goes back a number of years. It was a tiny town back 1975. I don't know if anyone else has been there way back then, but it was a great community then. It's a great community now. So like I said, I'm in favor of expansion. And like was said earlier, I'm in favor of increasing our commercial property type of thing for small businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Garret.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How much expansion of Roseville is too much? What can you do to preserve the quality of life in Roseville with the current expansion plans?
I think we look at, I touched on that in my prior answer quite a bit in terms of things that I'd like to see. I think one thing that I didn't touch on in terms of that was I would really love to see us also bring about mass transit that allows people to stay in Roseville, to spend money and then jump on a train and go to the Sacramento airport, so that we actually bring additional revenues in from up this hill, from those coming from Lincoln, Rockland, Auburn, Nevada City, and otherwise, to get to and from the airport and get them off the highway. In terms of the amount of expansion that's going on, really, I think we simply need to be smart about how we grow, and focus on that component. And I look at the plans that are out there and I say, okay, that's continued growth. And I think Mr. Alvord hit on it perfectly in that there's a whole bunch of residential and not as much commercial. And so I think from a business point of view, we need to look at that and figure out how do we make sure that we have the revenue base to generate the long-term opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Houdesheldt.
Yeah, the footprint for how we are growing right now was set decades ago. And as an example of how attractive our community is, we had a Chicago-based a developer builder come to Campus Oaks and put in an affordable housing project, not with subsidies from the state or in lieu, he used tax credits. And so that infill and that redevelopment, that repurposing of that former HP campus is really of the footprint. That for the expansion really is, and Councilman Alvord mentioned it, we need that retail, those retail places to fill up so folks don't have to travel across town and the congestion can lighten up. But our economy's changed and the brick and mortar is going away. So some of those have to repurpose and the park, and my time's up, but
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa.
You know, thank you. We can't talk about future growth and those impacts without also having the discussion about quality of life. You know, as a city, we have to maintain focus on maintaining and growing our systems of parks and trails and bikeways, which has already been mentioned. But we also need to acknowledge that Roseville has been well planned. And, you know, my job, if elected, is to work with my fellow council members to make sure we grow within these plans. We need to make the future planning easier, you know, and we need to keep an eye on, are we being consistent with those specific plans? Are we being consistent with what those before us envisioned, and also adopting new things? I mean, what was good for the past might not be relevant now in the future with so many different things coming at us. So we have to strike that balance. So it's hard to say we've always done it this way, we have to continue that way. But we also shouldn't abandon the fact that a lot of planning has gone into getting us where we are. And we need to ensure that we have the necessary infrastructure in place to continue to be that strong provider of quality of life here in Roseville.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question. And this time we'll start with Mr. Alvord. Some new residents who are minorities are not feeling welcome here. What do you think we should do to make our community more welcoming to all residents?
I think that's definitely something that's happening nationwide. Roseville has a pretty good track record. I know people that move here initially have a view that it's like other places, but I think after they've been here a while, they see that it is different. Our police, for example, we've had community teams and homeless teams, just a lot of neat leading edge things in our police department that other communities don't have. One of the things I started doing, especially since the Floyd incident, is meeting with community members that don't look like me, and asking questions and trying to understand the experience from their eyes of what they went through. And I'm telling you, it is so eye-opening. And I've used the example before, you know, I've been pulled over twice when I was younger. Never, ever in my mind ever thought about I need to put my hands on the steering wheel. Never concerned that I might actually get shot during this pullover. You know, those kind of things never went through my mind. I didn't have that kind of experience or background. Never walked through a store and felt like I was being watched. So I just think we need to listen and try to be compassionate.
Thank you. Mr. Pople.
Yes, thank you. No, I think that we just need to have open dialogue. I think that we need to get together a little bit more, you know, open conversations so that folks can talk about these issues and share their viewpoints. Like Mr. Alvord had mentioned, you know, the stories and the life experiences that people have had, you know, they're a little bit different than some of our faces, you know, like the people who have faces like mine, you know, so I want to get out of the way, but I want to amplify voices. I want to be able to get up on a stage and introduce somebody who's going to be able to talk about those issues and sit back and listen and use my handy dandy pen and write down notes, because that's the most important thing, is that we sit and we listen, because it's the only way that we're going to grow.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I concur with what Mr. Pople said. I think the big part is communication. I work with a lot of minorities here in Roseville, veterans, non-veterans and so forth. Homeowners and that kind of thing. So I think we have an issue with our communication with minorities and so forth. And I know in the school district, we have some issues and we're working on improving those. I think we're doing a great job as far as with our youth and everything, as far as resolving those issues with the minority population. So I think it's just the main thing of communicating and working together as a team, because we're all here for the same purpose and everything, to make Roseville a great community to live in, and it's shared by different people of different races or religions type of thing. There shouldn't be any distinction between anybody type of thing. Everybody should be treated fairly in our city. Thank you.
Mr. Garret.
On this issue, I think we have to lead from the front. I think as a city council, I think there's tons more that we can do. I'm an ethnic minority here in the city, and I am constantly dealing with issues directly because of my race or the race of my children. This is common within the school system. The usage of the N-word is something that's very casually used in our environment. And we have to figure out how do we address not just the N-word, but how we marginalize people, and not just based on race, but on all things. I mean, we should be also having that same discussion around sexism as well. Part of what I've done is built a personal relationship with police over the years. So not just serving on the Roseville Police Activities League, but bringing police to actually play basketball with people at Hewlett Packard, inviting police in this very house to have barbecues with me, going shooting with police, so that they can actually then have a discussion with me and understand how their perception is very different from my perception and how we then come together to build solutions. I think we need that in Roseville.
Mr. Houdesheldt.
Yeah, thank you. So in the wake of the George Floyd incident, I would encourage everyone who is viewing this to go back and look at our June 3rd City Council meeting and the comments that we made that evening. Roseville is very purposeful in its focus. We've begun under the mayor and the management of the City Council an anti-racism and inclusiveness program that will come to fruition here over the coming days, or over the coming weeks. It's very important. It's unfortunate, you know, I said that night, my heart breaks every time I see prejudice or bigotry. I have no room in my life for those who are intolerant. And I'm proud that Roseville champions diversity and inclusiveness moving forward. We should be a welcoming community. We are, yeah, I'll end there.
Mr. Mendonsa.
Yeah, I think it's sad, but also interesting we're having to have this discussion in 2020. That said, I think this is a different discussion than we would have, say, a year from now or a year prior from now. I mean, not to disparage anybody or to give credence to any sort of racism, but I think that people are more agitated because of COVID. They're cranky and, you know, everything that relates to that. Having been a former law enforcement officer, I believe in a lot of things as far as communication and reaching out to the community, working with our law enforcement on community policing, you know, and also it just comes down to this, hearing versus listening. And many of us in this community, not just in Roseville, but around us, we as people, we're reluctant to change, and we often listen to answer instead of hear to understand. And I think that's a very important distinguishment. And as someone who's elected, you need to learn that, and you need to be cognizant that you're going to have to deal with these issues because it's important to people. So I think that's something that I would certainly do if elected.
Mr. Sakala.
Yes, thank you. Well, you know, I think this is a very relevant issue right now. And where I start is I think we all need to treat everyone with dignity and respect. That's the foundation of being welcoming. I think it includes outreach. We need to do outreach to our neighborhood associations, to our schools, to our business community. And we really need the city and the council to set the tone that Roseville is a welcoming, collaborative, inclusive city, and that we won't tolerate the type of acts or behavior that we've seen recently and heard about around town. So I think it's really important. I think we need to spend some time and focus on it. And, you know, personally, I would love if Roseville was listed as one of the most friendly cities in California.
Thank you. And now the candidates will be able to make a 1-minute closing statement, and we'll begin with Mr. Pople.
Right. Once again, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and to Arcona for hosting this forum tonight. You know, you've stepped up to provide a critical service for Roseville residents by opening up this special Zoom meeting, so thank you. Public service is an awesome responsibility that I take very seriously. Being a council member means listening to all voices in Roseville and coming up with solutions that put Roseville families first. You know, I've lived here for the majority of my life, and I'm going to do my level best to serve you the way you deserve to be represented. You know, I'm not beholden to developers. I won't ignore your voices for my convenience. You know, we have a chance to build upon a solid foundation that we have for the city in a way that will benefit us all. No one knows what the future is going to look like due to the pandemic, but we know that it's going to take hard work and a willingness to listen to more than just one point of view to keep Roseville moving forward. So again, please visit my website at www.neilpople.com, and I'd be so honored to earn your vote. Thank you so much.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I wanted to also thank the League of Women Voters and the Arkona organization. I also want to thank the audience for taking the time to call in tonight and spend the last hour and a half listening to the candidates that are running for city council. I feel any candidate that puts in for this race type of thing, new people as well as the existing people that are currently holding the seats, they should all be commended, because volunteerism, I think, is a big thing. It's not, people aren't doing it for money type of thing. It's not a job that pays a lot of money, or I would have taken the job even if it didn't pay any money type of thing. So money isn't a consideration as far as running for city council, because you get some kind of small stipend like the school board does for school board members. So, but I just wanted to say that if anyone has any more questions for me, you can check my webpage, which is garyfordistrict5.com, and I would appreciate your vote on election day. Thank you.
Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett, I think you're still muted.
I'm unmuted now. Okay. First of all, thanks to Arkona and the League of Women Voters for putting on this candidates forum. Running for city council is a continuation of me stepping up when called upon. I've actually invested in the schools and communities of District 1 specifically, and been an active member of the greater Roseville community, from the Chamber of Commerce to the Placer Food Bank with Roseville Police Activities League, and most recently on the city's Charter Review Commission. I know this district and I know the city of Roseville very well. Beyond that, I've also overseen and managed multi-million-dollar budgets and demonstrated my financial acumen on behalf of the city as well. Within HP, in my career there, I rotated through finance, where I had the responsibility for driving financial predictability for a $4 billion budget. From there, I went on to lead multiple businesses that were up to $250 million. So I clearly understand that. And when I look at the city of Roseville, there's a 526 or 550 million or so budget that I'm completely comfortable being engaged with. My experience, leadership, and commitment to the city are what make me the best candidate for District 1. Thank you.
Mr. Houdesheldt.
Yes, thank you everyone for spending the last 90 minutes with us. I'm proud to have earned, and I say earned, the support of many in the community. Many that are on the Roseville City School District Foundation, those who've served the community before, those who are serving the community now. One of my supporters, small business owner Paul Frank, said it best in a video testimonial. Bruce and I don't always agree on the issues, but I know when I call him up, he'll answer and he'll listen to me. And that's the ethic that I bring to the city council and will continue to bring to the city council. I have the endorsement of the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, the Roseville Local Firefighters 1592, the Police Officers Association. But what I'm most proud of is the folks who take my sign because they've had the conversation with me and they know I care about them. So visit me at www.justbruce.net, or call me at 916-952-1287.
Thank you. Mr. Mendonsa.
Yes, thank you to Arkona and the League of Women Voters as well for hosting such a great forum. I want to thank everybody who participated tonight, and I want to thank this forum for the opportunity to share my thoughts on these topics. I want to reiterate, I am deeply committed to our community, and I've demonstrated that in my ongoing community service for many years within this city. I'm ready to take the next step in my commitment to public service by serving as a council member. I would encourage all of you in District 1 to please visit my website, which is tracymendonsa.com. Take time to review my website, but also take a moment to really scroll through and see the very extensive lists of current and former electeds, men and women and business owners of all size who have entrusted me to lead them, who have spoken about my past leadership and what my future endeavors are when elected. And, I hope to earn your vote on November 3rd. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sakala.
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to thank Arkona for hosting this forum tonight, as well as Kathy from the League of Women Voters for moderating this panel. Really appreciate having the opportunity to share with everybody on the call tonight. I think when you look at what I've done in the community, when you look at my record, you'll see that I've invested myself fully in everything that I've done. When you talk to people that have worked with me and have known me for years, they'll tell you, Geoff made an impact. He left this place better than when he came. And I think that's what I'll do for the city as well. What I hope to do is, listen, collaborate, and really be a catalyst for the future of Roseville and make sure that this city that we love, that we live in, stays great and gets even better. Thank you.
Mr. Alvord.
I'm really impressed that we still have 62 people on listening. I think it's important. And even though you can only vote for people in your district, we do serve the whole city. So I hope you get involved in these campaigns. Financial and volunteers, you care about who these people are. And you've got 7 great community members right now to choose from. I want to talk a little bit about my endorsements because if you go on my website, which is talktoscott.org, you can read the endorsements, and they've written reasons why they're endorsing me. And there's a very common theme, and I so appreciate that. But the endorsements do include the Chamber of Commerce PAC, a bunch of elected officials, several former mayors, past city managers, and numerous business owners. I have a cop. My father was a cop. I have a child who's currently a police officer. And so it's an honor to be endorsed by public safety organizations such as the Roseville Police Officers Association, the Roseville Police Association, and the Firefighters Local 1593. And I also have the endorsement of 4 out of 5 high school board members. I promise to stay active, and if you vote for me, I will keep that promise. Hope to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our forum. I would like to thank the candidates for participating. I would also like to thank the volunteers who made this forum possible. We hope you found this forum helpful. Voter information and ballots will be mailed the first week of October. Please read the information carefully. Due to COVID-19, there are a lot of changes to our election process this year. If you are voting by mail, please mail your ballot early. If you are voting in person, please note that our traditional polling places are being replaced with our voter service centers located throughout the county. There will be opportunities for early voting. There will also be several drop box locations available in various locations throughout the county. Information regarding these locations will be in your voter information. For information on how to vote, when to vote, and where to vote, please visit placerelections.com. That's placerelections.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you everyone else for attending. We really appreciate it. Arkona is very much a public service organization, and this is exactly what we're best at. So thank you very much. And candidates, again, thank you so much for coming out to us and speaking to the people. Exactly what we need right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.